So my addiction started at a very early age. I didn't get high with drugs, but I was getting high from the action that I was getting away with, stealing from stores and having little things that I couldn't afford. And I didn't know nothing about addiction then, of course, because I was young. But it was easy to fall into that kilo of cocaine and fall in love with it. You know, I thought I was in love with the person. I was, 18 and a half, and he was 40 years old. And I sniffed so much cocaine that there came a time where I started getting these bad headaches. And they were burning sensations in the scalp of my head. I felt somebody was burning the scalp of my head, and I kept going to doctors, and I was never honest about my addiction.
Yeah, they never picked up on it, though?
No. Until this one ear, nose, and throat doctor. His name is Dr. Lane, and he just retired last week, sent me a letter, and I was like, wow, he was my doctor for years. He was the only one that sat down and said, I need to put a scope up your nose. And it was a huge TV, and he showed me what he was going through. I could see it in his face, like, what am I looking at here? And he was like, Miss Torres, what are you doing? You know, he would never mention drugs or anything, but I knew what he meant. So he told me, I'm going to show you something. And when he put the camera, there was so much buildup. He then disclosed that I had a hole in my nose. He said, your nose is in a hair before it collapses. If you continue doing what you're doing, you're going to lose the bone structure of your nose. And he told me, tomorrow we're going to do an emergency surgery. I need to scrape your bones of your nose, and we have to drill a hole right here to get the liquids flowing. That's why I was getting the headaches, because I was just stuffing everything up where the liquids were not flowing. The mucus was not flowing. So I was very swollen, big. They kept pumping me with pain medication to get the pain away. Nothing will take that pain away. Nothing. And so he was the one who discovered it and said, you know what, I need to get you in here tomorrow morning, 9 o'clock, we're doing surgery. And I said, okay, all right. So I went to surgery. And I don't know if you had sinus surgery. When you have sinus surgery, when you come out of that surgery, you can't breathe because your nose, they stuff them with gauze all the way up to here. Okay? Your nose, there's a world up there. Like people say, they see these little two nostrils. There's a world in your sinuses. And so they stuffed them with the gauze. And he instructed me that day, you cannot lay down to sleep. You must sleep sitting down. I remember. And I had to go back the next day at 9 o'clock to get the gauze out because that was what it was absorbing the blood. So I get home, and I have massive blocks of cocaine in my drawer. They were just thrown in my drawer. Like, this person gave me access to drugs, so I just had it right there. And I wanted to take a hit. I wanted to use with the gauzes in my nose. Now, there's no way that I can take a hit with the gauzes in my nose.
Figure out a way.
But this addiction, you know, every time I think about this, I say, wow, my mentality, I didn't care. And like, I could have just said, you know, go to bed, go to sleep, go to tomorrow, get your gauzes out.
Right.
You know, follow the process.
Plus you had pain medication.
Right. Take a minute. But no, I wanted that. And so what I did was I had the little thin straws from Dunkin' Donuts, and I started poking holes in the gauze.
Oh.
And I would poke and rip, and blood was coming out of my face. And, you know, I look back at that, and it's like, it's insanity.
I'm a little naive about anything but alcohol, but weren't there other ways to use it?
I didn't know. I wasn't introduced to crack cocaine till later on in my addiction. Yeah. So all I did was sniff it, and that's all I knew. And so that's the only way that I wanted to take it. And so in my mind, I thought I was getting high, but I wasn't. I wasn't getting high because there's no way that you're going to get high with all that packed gauze. And when I went the next day, I was so embarrassed because my doctor looked at me He knew that I messed with the gauze. He knew that I did something, and he just looked at me, and that look, it made me feel so dirty.
Wow.
Like disrespected, like I'm a nothing. Like, why couldn't I just wait? You know?
I went to an ear, nose, and throat specialist too.
Yeah.
Was with my first wife, was Sheila, and because I was having headaches too from starting all the cocaine. And they put a scope up my nose, and the doctor looked at me and looked at my wife, and the look he gave me was the one of just absolute disgust.
Yep.
You know, so I remember the look too. That just, I mean, no sympathy, just absolute disgust.
Yeah.
That will basically, why am I even wasting my time with trash like you?
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah?
That's true. That's the look he gave me.
Yeah?
And he told me, Miss Torres, if you continue doing what you're doing, those were his words. If you continue doing what you're doing, Miss Torres, your nose is going to collapse. You're going to have a lot of problems in your life. So I thought maybe he could patch it up. I said, can you patch the hole? He laughed. He said, no. It's like a tree. You can't patch a tree.
Yeah.
And so I was very disappointed that he couldn't fix my nose.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So I really don't have a nose. I tell people, if you don't have to have sinus surgery, if it's not imminent that you have it, please don't have it, because your nose will never be the same. After that surgery, my mucus changed. The texture of my mucus changed. There was always a lot of dryness in my nose. I didn't stop using. You think I'd stop using because my doctor told me that I didn't care. You know, I was putting that pure stuff in my nose, and what it was doing, it was eating me up inside.
Yeah. But this is when you were, how young were you at this, all this?
I was between 18 to 20, so I was young.
Yeah, so this was your first encounter. Did you think you had a problem then?
You know, I never thought about problems
Yeah.
because I was one like my father. I always held a great job.
What were you doing at the time?
So I worked for Optimus. It's a
yeah.
clinic on East Main Street and Barnum Avenue. And they have everything. They have from dental to podiatrist to pediatrics, adult medicine. So I worked there as a receptionist, and then I became a clerk typist. So I was helping people in different areas. And working there, my disease started to escalate. Because now what I was using before is not doing the job. So now I need a little more to get me where I want to go. And working there, people started to notice the change in me, because the last ones that we think that people don't notice and the last ones to find out is ourselves, but people are watching. And they always knew that I was a happy-go-lucky person. Sometimes I wonder why I did cocaine. I didn't need it.
No, you didn't.
But I was always a happy-go-lucky person, so people would see it as she's just hyper.
Yeah.
Most of it was cocaine. I was high. And I remember HR approaching me and saying, Liz, we're going to do a random drug test for some employees, and we're going to need you to come with us. And I'm like, okay.
Random drug.
But I was the only one in the van.
Yeah.
And I said, but where's the rest of the people? I mean, we got all these employees. Why nobody else is in here? And she was like, oh, it's you right now. I knew. I went through it. I could have said, listen, my urine is going to be dirty. Nah. You know, I was fooling myself, always with that denial.
Maybe maybe they'll get a false test or something.
Yes.
Maybe I'll get lucky.
Maybe I could get away with something. You know, I could think about something and get away with something. Because all my life I was always thinking about something to cover something,
To get away with it.
to cover a lie, to lie in another lie, to get what I wanted. You know, so I thought maybe, you know what, I'm just going to put some water in it, or I don't know. I took the urine, and she gave me an ultimatum. They loved me very much. They didn't give me the ultimatum to go to a program, though.
Yeah.
They gave me the ultimatum of, you quit or we fire you. And I told her, which one's going to pay me? She said, if we fire you. And I said, well, then you fire me, because I need to fund my addiction. So I got an employment for a very long period of time. And I think that's when my disease really took off. That's when everything really started to really take off. in my life.
Is this guy, your first dealer, still in your life?
He passed away.
No, at that time.
No, I mean at the time. Were you still
That
living
you
with
lost
the
your
guy?
job.
He had his own wife.
Oh, some little details you happen to leave.
He had his wife. He was an older person, of course, and he had his own life, but he was very private. And as young as I was naive. I fell in love with his drugs, so I thought I fell in love with him. And so I didn't want to see anything. Whatever he told me, I believed him. So he was always traveling here and there. He was funding me to go to Puerto Rico, to go to any hotel, to go anywhere I wanted. So I traveled a lot.
How did he make all his money? Was it the drugs?
Yes.
Oh,
Yes.
well.
He wasn't one for 10 cents and 20s.
I
He
get
was
you.
selling kilos at a time, and that's how I was introduced to it, so it was kind of normal for me. But then he didn't want to give me anymore because now he saw that I was, so now it's like, I'm going to cut you off, and now I got to go find it elsewhere. And that's where trouble started brewing, and,
Trouble started brewing. It wasn't
You know,
trouble
doing
up to this point.
many things.
I have to ask, with all that you'd already been through by the time you're working in the
Clinic?
health clinic, how did you have a happy-go-lucky attitude? Because that's not necessarily a byproduct
high.
of cocaine.
Yeah.
I mean,
For
drugs-
me, when I sniffed cocaine, it was like it brought me up. It kind of like it's like my personality and the drug kind of like clicked in. So if I was happy-go-lucky all the time, I think the drugs even gave me that incentive to just keep it going. When I didn't have it, you'll know.
Yeah.
Because now this is just coming down, like my attitude will change. I had these mood swings. But anytime I had my coke, I always had a little something, whether it was here or here, I always had some with me.
Yeah.
Always. I don't remember not having it. So it was years and years doing that, or doing whatever I had to do to get it.
So you're unemployed, you lost your supply.
Asked him. He was still in my life. He was always in my life, but he was not giving me drugs like he used to. Things changed. I didn't know about programs. I didn't know nothing about that. All I knew is that I liked cocaine and that I wanted to get it, So putting myself in danger, I've always been the person where I've never been afraid of going to places where people don't go, or people will say, don't go there. I'll be like, I'm going in, I'm daring. I don't know. Ever since I was a child, I did that. Not my sister. My sister will stay back and say, I'm not going in there. There's trouble. And I'm like, I'm going in. I want to see what's going to happen, So I got me in trouble many times. I was incarcerated for stealing. So that's when things started to change also. Because now I'm not as good as I thought, For a little while, I got away with stealing and robbing Macy's and JCPenney. I was banned from the mall for life. They said, we don't ever want to see you here. You will be arrested.
Wow.
Yeah. They said, we were waiting for you. You have stolen so much money, millions of dollars from the stores, from JCPenney. I mean, I robbed them blind. I would go in a cart, dress up with my pocketbook and my wallet and look professional and have a receipt in hand. And I would stand in the line, make believe that I was going to check out and have JCPenney bags already available, filled with stuff. And I would go through the back door like nothing, looking at my receipt, and I used to get away with it. And so I
Go
used
through
to
the
back
back.
and do it again.
Go through the back door.
They
just-
have the doors that face
The less
wall,
prominent.
Then you
Yeah.
have the ones that go to the garage. So
Yeah.
I would find those little exits that I thought that maybe they're not. Yeah, I was always thinking ahead of all this stuff when I would go in there. And then I would sell the items for money and buy drugs. I would find little means and ways. My father was never, even when we started living with my biological father, he was never really a father. He loved us very much. I know he did. But he didn't know. He couldn't stop. Like, he didn't know what to do.
Yeah.
And we were already older. We were already teenagers. My sister got pregnant the first time she had sex.
Wow.
Yes. As soon as she came here, she got pregnant
So both of you are living with your dad
with my dad.
and now your niece or nephew, right? She had a baby.
No, she went to live with the kid that she was
okay.
having sex with her family. So
Yeah.
I was going to Bassick High School. I wanted to continue my education. I always wanted to go to school and become something, but I started hanging with the wrong crowd again, doing things like that. And so I dropped out of high school right before graduation.
Mm-hmm.
His name was Raymond, he came back into my life, opened up a store in Manhattan and asked me to go work with him. And so in a blink of an eye now, I'm dropping out of high school and I'm going with him to Manhattan to run a store and sell drugs. And so my life just went by very quickly. I started doing things in my life that took me places that I never thought I would go.
So when did you first get caught stealing?
How old were you?
That was years after.
Yeah, and
It was
then
years
but you said you were incarcerated.
I have my children already.
Yeah.
Two of my children, I had Eddie, God rest his soul, and I think I had Georgie or Eddie only. I don't remember much. That's when I got incarcerated. I started getting arrested, let's put it that way. And so things started to escalate to the point where I was on probation, got arrested again for stealing. And that's when they said, listen, my lawyer said, I can't do that for you. You got to do some time.
Mm-hmm.
So I did, I think, 45 days or something. It was horrible.
Did you have your boys with the man who was your supplier, or?
I have a son with him,
Yeah.
Georgie, my middle son.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like I said, it happened so fast. I had already stopped seeing him for a very long time. I think it was like 6 years that he was out of my life.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Was starting to do different things. And my foster mother passed away in Puerto Rico. We were notified, and Daisy and I, we immediately got a ticket and we said, let's go bury my mother. And he found out, because he was always in contact with the family.
Mm-hmm.
So he found out that my mom passed away, and he ended up in Puerto Rico. And I don't know if it was my old feelings or emotions. He offered to pay a nice hotel in San Juan for us, and we were like, sure, let's go. We don't think about repercussions or anything like that. Let's go. Let's go to San Juan. Let's go have a nice villa, whatever. And so we took him up on his offer. And that same night we were drinking, and one thing led to another, and I got pregnant from Georgie.
Mm-hmm.
After the fact, so.
I give you credit. I'm not sure that I would go to show that level of respect for someone who had treated me the way your foster mother treated you.
No.
That must have been hard to face your grief and the trauma that
And
you
the
had.
anger.
Yeah.
There was always a lot of anger for her not taking. She knew.
Mm-hmm.
I know she knew. You don't live in a household and not know what's going on in your household.
Mm-hmm.
But she was in a denial. She was much older than him, so let me tell you a little bit about my family.
Okay.
Or how I grew up. I grew up with incest as well. My foster mother was married.
Mm-hmm.
She had a daughter. She divorced that man and married his son, which was my foster father.
I can't.
But it
daughter-
wasn't her son, so it was her stepson.
Wow.
So
Your
now her
foster
daughter
mother married
and my
her stepson.
father are brothers and sisters. You get it?
Yeah.
Her daughter and her husbands are brothers and
Half
sisters.
brothers, half
Yes.
siblings. Got it.
Yes. And that was always, it was one of those, like, you don't speak about it.
Yeah.
You don't ask questions. I don't care if you don't understand. That was the type of environment that I grew up. You never ask any questions.
Mm-hmm.
The opposite of what I'm doing in
Yeah.
my life now is about asking good questions.
Right.
And we couldn't ask her anything because she would not answer.
Wow.
She would just change the conversation or whatever, or who are you to ask me questions about my life? So it was always confusing to grow up in that type of environment.
Yeah.
You know? And so that was my upbringing. Always wondering why, There was always that why. Why me?
Yeah.
Why couldn't I have a grandmother and uncles and siblings? And I didn't have none of that. It was always my sister Daisy and myself, and that's it.
Do you ever reunite with your other siblings?
Well, my brother Wilson was the youngest, and my brother George was the oldest. And my brother Wilson came down to see us. I don't recall. I was in my 20s when my brother came down to see his sisters and meet us again. My sister Miriam was always in and out of our lives. And he always wanted to, reconnect. But he was drinking like my dad. And one day he was home. He was doing good. His friends came over and told him, come on, let's go to the club. Let's go have a drink. And he was like, nah, I don't want to go out today. And they were like, come on, man, let's go. And he was like, all right, I will have a drink, whatever.
Yeah.
And that was the day when he came out of the club. He got in his car. It started snowing. He was a little tipsy, lost control. And in Waterbury, this happened and hit a pavement, and he lost his life instantly. That was the first one. After that, my father, we always had Sunday dinners at Daisy's. She was a little more stable. She had her husband, she had her children. So we used to go to Daisy's house to have dinner. I remember being pregnant from Georgie, and my father always wanted to come and rub my belly and tell me that it's a girl, and we're going to call her, was it Georgina or something like that? I don't know. And I was like, I'm not calling my daughter Georgina, because his name is George. My father's name was George. That's why I named my son George after him, because he died a month prior to my son being born. My father, one Sunday, didn't come to dinner, and my sister, she was a little worried, but she was like, maybe he just went home, whatever. We didn't see him on Sunday. We didn't hear from him. It wasn't like him. He was always very responsible. He was an alcoholic, but like I said, he was a functioning alcoholic. He would do everything. It didn't matter, but he always had that Budweiser in his hand. He had to have that Budweiser in his hand. And so my dad went to bed and never woke up. His liver just couldn't take it anymore. It blew up, and we found him 2 days later because my sister went to the complex and said, I need you to open that door. It's my father. We don't know where he is. And the smell was already of decomposition in the room. So he died instantly. And it was like a month before I had my second child. And so I named him Georgie, like his grandfather.
So you've had a lot of loss.
Yes.
Well, it's also, as you go through your early years and your story, there's so much chaos.
Yeah.
It's just chaos from one thing to another, to survival, to drug use, to who knows. I mean,
all of it.
Sadness and trauma and tragedy. And what was the moment? How did you even start to consider recovery? What happened?
I tried.
Yeah?
Especially my sister was always, my sister and I, she was introduced to the kilo. She was introduced to the kilo. She scraped that kilo. She sniffed from the kilo. She liked it for a little while, but she said no more. I don't want to live my life like this. She was able to do that.
Yeah.
Not me.
Not me.
So that's the difference between...
Yeah, I couldn't do that either.
Exactly. I couldn't stop.
Yeah.
And so she resented me for that because she would say, you have children. Think about your children. And I didn't like when she said that because it was like she made me feel like I didn't love my children. And I do love my children, but I love that more. It's a different love.
Yeah.
Right? And so my sister was always on top of me to go to a program. Let's get you in a program. Let's get you some help. Many times when I got in trouble, arrested again, I'll tell the judge I'll go do a program and I'll be good. And so I did. I did many programs. I did CVH. I went to CVH mostly. I did 5 times in there.
Connecticut Valley Hospital.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Very structured, very disciplined at the time, the STAR program. I did very well, very well. But there was I always remember having this, they call it reservation. Like I knew I wanted to live a good life. I loved the way I felt leaving that program. I felt clarity. I felt like I can do whatever, conquer whatever I wanted to do. But I always kept this one phone number, or I had this one little phone, or I wouldn't be totally honest. I would only give you bits and pieces of what you wanted to hear, right? And eventually, I would end up going back out, you know. I started going to meetings, to a 12-step program, had a sponsor, loved the meetings, loved the shares, but I wasn't really honest. That's the part that I always go back to that and say, I will go to meetings and lie. And I would cry and cry and cry. But in reality, I was crying just to, I don't want to say put a show, but I knew that I was going to use. I knew that I wanted to use and that I was going to. But I needed to hide it now, because now my sister's telling me either you stop or I'm gonna do anything to take your kids away. And so I started to hide it and do other things and manipulate and lie. And so that lasted a long time too. Then I started combining cocaine and the pills, oxys, Percocets. I started doing the ups and down, the up and down in my life. And my daughter Lindsay was 4 years old. It was Christmas. And I spent the entire night sniffing cocaine and popping pills. And I wanted to supposedly be good in the morning, correct, so when my kids get up, they don't see me, you know, put on all this makeup and have breakfast ready. But unfortunately, I did so much that I couldn't get up. And so I remember laying in my couch. I remember opening my eyes, but I couldn't keep them open. So it was like, I tried so hard to get up, to do, but it was like I was paralyzed because of so much that I did that it wouldn't allow me to get up. And so my daughter's father, she removed Lindsay from the household. My son Eddie had just gone to the Air Force. He was 17. He took the test and he passed it with 99. They wanted him so bad. And so he went to the Air Force. He ended up in Alabama, Montgomery, Alabama, and he did very good in the 8 years that he was there. So it was just Georgie and Lindsay at the time. And Lindsay was removed, and so it was just me and George. And Georgie saw. He never saw me using, but he saw his mother go from here to here. Slowly, he saw the change. He saw his home convert into a crack house. He saw that before there was always food in the refrigerator, and now he's opening up and there's nothing to eat. Now he's coming home from school asking me, I'm hungry, Mommy, and I'm like, I don't have any money. Having money, but it's not for food, because I'm going to need it to fund my addiction. And those are the things sometimes that, and I know that, you know, recovery has given me that forgiveness, because I needed to forgive myself. But, you know, I spend now my life, you know, trying to do better for them because of the things that I did. You know, I know Georgie suffered. And even after the fact, when I came into recovery, my son started using. He started smoking marijuana and drinking heavily. And I'll backtrack a little before he did that. My son Eddie, he was 24 years old. He was in the Air Force. He was a staff sergeant at that age. He acquired so many medals in 8 years that a person that's been there for 20 doesn't have them. I remember a commander asked me once, your son acquired all these medals? And I said, yeah. He said, how long he was in the Air Force? I said, 8 years. He said, I've been there for 30 and I don't have 3. So that made me feel like so proudful of my son, because he really wanted to change. I think he wanted to change me as well. He wanted to do anything in his power to maybe take me with him and see if the change of scenery will change whatever was going on with his mom, because he knew that I wasn't the mother that he knew. The look in my eyes, the touch wasn't the same. He knew that I was up to something, but they didn't really know what it was.
Yeah.
Because I never did it in front of them. But things started to change in the household. Now things are not as clean and neat, and we don't have food on the table. All these little things. My mom is not showing up to school when I have a rehearsal or recital, whatever. I'm not there because I'm too high to show up to my son's. And he's here saying, "Mommy, I want you to be there." And I'm like, "Yeah, but I'm in a bathroom. I can't stop my mouth from moving. I'm panicked. I'm paranoid, and I'm not showing up to school to my son's, most important day." I think those things kept me using even more. Every time I would think about my daughter not being in the household, I would try to medicate so that I didn't have to feel that.
Yeah.
Because that guilt and shame just would ponder me. And so I needed to do something to ease that pain. And getting high worked.
Yeah.
It worked for a little while. Because when the high goes down, now you're back in square one. Now I have more problems because if I borrow money, I owe you. Now I have more problems because now my addiction is escalating even more. So I always thought that I could resolve the issue by just taking a hit and not thinking about anything, not talking about anything like that, and all will be well. And so that's not the way it works. So my son Eddie went into the Air Force, did great things, and in the Air Force you can't use drugs. There's one drug that we can all say that is a common denominator, and it's alcohol. That's the only thing that airmen can have in their system is alcohol. And so I started seeing my son, pictures of my son, he always had a drink in his hand. I noticed that he always took a picture with a drink in his hand. He was always happy, but with a drink in his hand, right? And he was doing real good. He was happy that his mom, this is when my son passed away, he was very content that I found recovery. He wanted to come home to be with me for a little while, just to maybe take a nice 2-week vacation and come and visit and spend some time with Mom and Georgie and try to help me get Lindsay back home. But the same thing that happened to my brother. He was drinking. He got in his car. It was a little tipsy. He was in Mississippi when this happened, and before he got in his car, it was early in the morning, and the sun was starting to come out, and his last words were, "What a beautiful day." His friends were telling me. Because he worked in the Air Force, but he was also a bouncer. In Mississippi, they have these, their restaurants are out in the open, and they play live music, and you dance, and you drink, and you eat, and it's like this huge, big family. And so Eddie became the bouncer in that establishment, and he did that for a little while, and he had so many friends, and people loved him so much, but they didn't stop him from getting in the car. Like, they stayed the night before cleaning up the place and whatever, but I don't understand. Why can't anybody say, why don't you just sleep it off? But he lived so close, like 5 minutes from the base. And so he just got in his car, and 5 minutes later, he swerves and hit a tree, and my son died instantly. He wasn't even wearing his seatbelt. And my son did everything by the book. If you're in his car, you need to wear your seatbelt. And so it was very odd to me when the report came in that my son wasn't wearing a seatbelt, and that's why I know that this disease just doesn't care. It impairs us. We think that we're in control, and we're not.
Yeah.
We're not. So I lost 3 generations in my family due to alcohol. They say alcohol is a drug. It is. And so when Eddie passed away, I was in my first year and a half in recovery. It was very early recovery, very early. I was already going to CCAR. I had gotten a gig with the HOT team as a case manager very quickly. I was referred to the HOT team, and I started working there, helping people, helping the homeless. I was happy, I finally found what I was looking for, And then I got that visit. And I knew because of the way they were dressed, and they knocked on the door, and I saw that paper in their hand, and I didn't want to open the door. I knew in my heart what it was. I didn't want to open the door, so I immediately called my son, Daddy. But it went to voicemail. That's when I knew. So Georgie was smoking and drinking, and his brother was reaching out to him and telling him, hey, what's up? What you doing? Like, call me. And he would ignore his calls. Every time Eddie would text him, he would ignore his calls because he was, doing his thing. He didn't want to hear it. He didn't want to hear his brother telling him, hey, what's up? What you doing? Like, why you, And so when he received the news and he lost it, he was like, I ignored him, Mom. That's all he would say. I didn't take his calls. I didn't even text him. And he just kept repeating that and repeating that and repeating that. And I saw my son, and I say, maybe this was a test. I saw my son go down that negative and dark hole. And I got on my knees and I prayed. I asked God to give me strength. I didn't feel like using when my son passed away. There wasn't no desire to use, and people were so concerned. I had so many people in my life, from my spiritual life to CCAR, all these people that loved me so much, but they were paying attention because, she could relapse.
Right.
But I didn't feel like using. I just wanted to ensure that my children were going to be okay. Because if I was suffering, I could only imagine how Georgie and Lindsay were suffering too. Because that's their big brother. So I started praying a lot, asking God for direction. I didn't use over my son's death.
How long ago was that now?
It's been 6 years.
Still, fresh.
Very.
Right? Yeah, because I remember when it happened, too.
Very. I never thought it would ever happen to me.
No, yeah.
But then I started thinking, God is punishing me.
Did you?
Yeah. Things started to come to my mind because the way it happened was, my story is very long. When I came into recovery, I was determined to get my daughter back. I didn't know where she was. Her dad had taken her to South Carolina. And she was doing real good. She was in the swim team, school. She was an A student. My daughter's very smart. But I wanted my daughter home, and I wanted to raise her. And so I went through the courts. I did everything the way I was supposed to do it. And the judge gave me sole physical residential custody of my daughter. And I think it was what I said. What I said. See, sometimes we want things, and so we try to cover up our lives to make ourselves look good, and in reality, that's not what I wanted to do. I needed him to understand who I was, and that I struggled all my life with drugs. I used drugs for all my life. That's all I knew. But I also showed him what I was doing about it, and how CCAR, played a big part in my recovery. Because when I went into CCAR, that's when I truly... I can't explain the feeling when I entered that center. I knew that was it.
Homecoming.
Yes. I was willing to do anything. Anything. So I didn't have to go back.
Right.
In the struggle. Because when I came in, I was in a very dark place. I transferred from sniffing cocaine to smoking crack. And that's where my life just went boom. In a blink of an eye. Lost everything. If I was saving a computer, it was gone. I would go up the hill. I had this huge TV, one of those old projectors. I went and wheeled that thing up the hill to the projects to see what I could get for it, for crack. That's what I was doing. That's when my addiction just didn't care.
What did you get for it?
Probably got 3 bags of crack. I don't know. I gave my Volvo away for crack. It was an old model. It was a 97 back then, and it was a nice black little 4-door sedan, and it was my car. You know, it was my little car, and I'll tell you, he don't care. So my drug dealer, you know, give me something, and he gave me, I don't remember what he gave me, but it was enough for me to say, take the keys and take the car. Signed it off to him.
So you have your daughter back?
Yes. Went through the courts and told the judge what I was doing. I also told the lady that raised my daughter, thank you. You see, the judge wasn't inspecting that, and I didn't go prepared to say that. It was something that came upon me at the moment. And she was sitting right here, and the judge is right here, and I asked permission to the judge, and my attorney is right over there. By the way, a person that I volunteered for, this nun, her name is Sister Teresa. She knew that I was fighting for Lindsay, and she said, "I'm gonna make sure that you're well represented." And so, this lawyer from Fairfield, Connecticut, represented me pro bono. So that was for one of the blessings that God he gave me a lawyer that was, you know, he knew what he was doing, and so he would tell me what to do and what to say, and I was like, I need to say something off the record, and he was going like this to me, and I was like, I just need to ask the judge if I can address this lady. And the judge said, sure. And so I remember turning around, and I looked at her, and I said, thank you. And I meant it. I said, thank you for keeping my daughter safe. Thank you for feeding her, for bathing her, for ensuring that she had everything that she needed at that age.
Yeah.
She did great things, and you're an incredible person, and she loves you so much, and I don't want to intervene with that. But she's my daughter, and I really would like to raise her, continue raising her. And I don't know if those were the words that the judge needed to hear, but he told me, I truly believe that you are a rehabilitated woman. And so I'm going to give you the opportunity to raise your daughter.
So how old is she today?
She's 18.
18.
Graduating on the 20th of June.
Nice.
Yeah, we already have a plan. Because community colleges are free for high school students, she's going to go get her associate's degree there. I did save a little college fund for her. I was able to do that. So she does have a cushion. So we're going to do the associate's degree, go to work. She still lives close by, so she can still have her job and live at home. And then after that, wherever she wants to do with her bachelor's and her master's, then we can, you know, whatever she wants to do.
That's great. So what's your recovery look like today? That's what Phil always asks. What's it look like today?
Oh yeah, we didn't. Do we ever say what you do now for CCAR?
Yeah. Now I'm an employee for CCAR.
For 6+ years?
Volunteer.
6 years? How long have you been with us?
I believe this is my 7th year.
Yes.
And so I came into CCAR when straight off the streets, you know. And I'm going to tell you a little bit, very briefly, how I came into recovery. I didn't know I was coming into recovery. I wasn't planning to come into recovery. I knew I didn't want to continue doing what I was doing. That much I knew. But I did not know how. I wasn't willing to just leave it all and go through the moments, right? So I remember one night, it was a Friday night, it was August 23rd of 2013. And I was home, and at the end of my rope, I started doing things that I never thought that I would have to do just to get drugs and money. I'm not proud of those things, but that was the lifestyle that I was living back then. And so I remember I was at home with this guy, and he had a lot of money, and we just kept buying drugs. And I remember every time he would go to the bathroom, I would kind of steal something from him, and he'll go to the bathroom, and I'll take money, and then I'll take a little rock here and a rock there. I was saving it for a rain, you know, for the next day, you know. So all I remember is the morning came. At 6 o'clock in the morning or 6:30, and that sun, and all my windows had the curtains where I had them nice and shut where you can't see inside the house for a reason. So it was dark, but I saw that little glare of sunshine. I remember standing in my living room, and that glare hit me. I saw the glare in my eye, and I'm not quite sure if it was between the glare and 6 and 8 o'clock in the morning. All I know is when they came back from the bathroom, I told them, you need to put your clothes on and you need to leave. And he didn't like that. at all. He wasn't feeling like driving. Or, we were doing it all night long, and so he just wanted to sleep it off, and I told him, no, my son's coming home, and I really need you to leave right now. And so I'm grateful to God that that man didn't kill me, because some people will get angry. They can start doing things, and I'm so grateful that he did not. And he left. He was, calling me names, whatever, but he did not touch me, and I thank God for that. Because he could have done anything. Anything he wanted. I was alone in my house. And the moment that door closed behind me, I remember locking it and feeling that sense of relief. And I had this little recliner in my living room. I didn't have much furniture because the walls were empty. Everything was gone. If it had value, it was gone because I sold it for drugs. And so I still had this little recliner in my living room, and I sat there from 6 to 8 o'clock in the morning, and I had this little Obama phone, state phones that they call Obama phones, and I had that phone, and I had my sister's number still there. And I haven't spoken to my sister like in 2 years, because that's when she really just stopped talking to me. She couldn't fathom that I was doing what I was doing. She always thought that she was going to get that phone call at night. It's going to say, we found your sister in a ditch or in a garbage truck or in a garbage can or whatever. And so my sister she didn't want nothing to do with me. And I remember just sitting there at 8 o'clock in the morning, and just like these emotions are going through me, and I'm getting this, I don't know. It's like, I don't know what's going on. I don't know. Something came upon me in that moment. And I texted my sister, I said, I need help. And she said, where are you? I said, I'm home. And she said, I'm on my way.
Yeah.
And today when I talk to my sister, and she always likes to be in the front seats when I share my story, because she's part of my story. She says, I knew by that text that you meant it. Don't ask me why. It was something spiritual came upon us. And she came home, and she asked me, are you hungry? And I said, yes, very. She bought me this little bowl. It was those little butter bowls. Once the butter's gone, you save the little bowl for leftover, whatever. So it was full of white rice and corned beef. And my sister went to the kitchen to grab a fork, and I was so hungry. I was just putting my hands in and just grabbing food and eating it, choking on it. And my sister looked at me, and I could see her holding back tears to see what a vibrant woman and a beautiful woman, how drugs had decayed me. Daughter, my house, I'm sorry, was disgusting. It was the smell of crack in the house. It was destruction. And she couldn't believe what my house had turned into. But she bought me the corned beef, and she bought me a Dunkin' Donuts coffee, and she let me eat. And then she started talking to me. She said, so now what? And I said, I can't do this anymore. I can't, Daisy. I am so tired. I was physically, emotionally beat up. Like, that was it. Like, I got to the end of my rope. Like, I couldn't even flick the lighter anymore to get high. And so I told her, I can't. She said, so what are we going to do? And I said, well, I got to move, because everybody knows me here. They know what I do. She said, no, you don't. And wherever you go, you always have to remember that you're taking yourself with you. And if you go to Alaska, I could pay a ticket for you to go to Alaska right now. But if you want to use in Alaska, you're going to find an Eskimo that's going to sell you drugs. And
it's true.
That just, it was like a wake up. When she said that, I don't understand what happened to me. But it was like I understood it verbatimly for what it was. Like, I knew that what she meant, that it doesn't matter what I do or where I go. I have to change me first. And she asked me, what do you got? And I remember pointing out to her the different places that I had hidden the drugs. That cabinet, over there. And I remember my sister collecting the drugs and asking me again, are you okay with me throwing this away? And I sat there and said, yeah,
She treated you like a resource.
She said, yep. And I said, yes. And I saw her throw them away. Now, all my life, people know you don't touch my drugs. You don't touch my paraphernalia. Don't touch anything that belongs to me. I don't care if it's just a little dot of powder. Do not touch it. And I remember looking at her, and it was so powerful because it was like my body was having an out-of-body experience as I'm watching her throw away. It was a lot because all night long I was for the next day because I had plans on keeping it going. No, I had money and I had drugs in front of me that day when I just didn't want that anymore. I couldn't do it anymore. I didn't plan to come into recovery. I didn't know that day was going to be the day.
Yeah.
It wasn't planned. But I guess he had other plans.
I call those divine appointments.
Yes. I truly believe that he woke me up and said, now it's time. Now I can use you to do other things. I truly believe that. My sister began cleaning my house. We started going to the Goodwill, getting a little plant here, a table there, a picture frame here. And we started converting that crack house back into a home. She would come every day before 7 o'clock, 15 minutes before, to take me to an NA meeting, drop me off. She would wait for me, and then she would come in, or she would pick me up or wait for me outside. She would say, go do your thing. And I would. And then I went to CCAR, and I became a volunteer. And I grew very fast. I think because I was ready, everything made sense. I wasn't faking it. Yeah. I wasn't doing it for people to see me, hey, did you see me? No. I was doing it just for, I don't know. I did everything the way it was supposed to be done. I didn't want to cut corners. I didn't want to do anything out of what I'm talking about is that I didn't want to just leave the drugs and continue with the behavior. So I had to change everything. I mean, everything in my life, I changed.
Yeah.
I never spoke to anyone outside of the people that I used to do drugs with. A lot of knocking on the door at 3 o'clock in the morning, at 4 o'clock in the morning, and I had to stand there and pray and say, God, I can't open that door. Sometimes I wanted to open that door. I really did. But I knew what would happen if I opened that door. I knew that it was free. I knew that it was a lot. I knew that it was everything that I wanted it to be, but not anymore. I did not want it anymore. Until one day there was no more knocking. And I started going out to CCAR every single day. From 9 to 5, I was there. I would get up in the morning, get dressed, and go to CCAR. And I would go through the front door and sometimes through the back, and you will see people say, Liz, yo, what's up, Liz? Everybody knew me. It was my neighborhood. And I would just put on my earphones and listen to Vicky Yogi. I don't know if that's how you say her name. She's a gospel singer.
Okay.
And because of who you are, I started listening to that song. And I started to listen to Juanita Byram. And she had this powerful lyrics in her music. And I could see my life transforming. I can see myself going through people that knew me and they wouldn't even see me. They wouldn't recognize me. There came a time when they just didn't bother me anymore. But I needed to make that change. I needed to to change everything in my life in order for that to happen. I had to throw away the phones with everything and start from scratch. New associations, new people, incredible people that are still in my life, that are still part of my recovery, that sustain me when I'm down. That if I need anything in my life today, drugs is not an option. Using is not an option. So I was a volunteer, and in 2015, and how it happened in this order. And I'm sorry that I'm jumping back and forth. That's what drugs do to you. Anyway.
The long-term effects, not the ones you've taken today. What? I'm just kidding.
When my son passed away, I immediately felt a sense of God is punishing me. However, I felt that because my daughter Lindsay came home in August of 2013 and my son died in September. So she only been home for a month, and Eddie passed away right away. And so what I saw, or a revelation, or I felt in my heart that it was, and I said, God, because he could have taken them both. I could have lost the custody of Lindsay and lose Eddie as well. But I truly believe that he needed Eddie. Eddie, he was like an angel here now out in this world, and he helped so many people. And he would go to hurricane reliefs, Sandy, a lot of different places to help. You know, he was a mini me. He loved to help people. And I truly believe that God needed him, that it was his time.
Yeah.
But he gave me Lindsay. And so that's why I continue to make sure that Lindsay, you know, has everything that she needs. And just in case anything happens to me, I want her to be okay. Now, I know I can't avoid if Lindsay's going to take a different path or whatever, but she can learn from me and from what I've done and teach her, you know, this is what happens when we do this, and this. Yeah. And so I always thought that it was maybe a punishment of God that he took Eddie, but at the same time, I always know that my son is always around me. He's like a little shining star. Sometimes I feel his presence with me, in a good way, and I always talk about it, and I try to keep his memory alive.
Yeah, it's important.
Always keep talking about little memories here and there, because it's important.
Yeah.
It's important.
I know when his anniversary comes around, you're very active on social media, and so you always do your best to remember him and honor his life. Appreciate that about you very much. The other thing, Sandy, that Liz hasn't really talked about at all, and we are running out of time for this podcast, is what a wonderful volunteer manager she is at Bridgeport. So,
yes, I was hired for the position. Yep.
And so she has literally helped. You've repaid it over and over and over again. You've helped hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people. So I know the Bridgeport community is thoroughly just pleased and amazed that you're now in the role you're in. And so you're like a welcome wagon all of your own, you know, that as soon as people come in, I think there's many employees now that are said, you know, Liz welcomed me and brought me into the Bridgeport Center, and now they're employed here.
And they're employees as well.
So thank you for that.
Yes.
It's remarkable. I know you let out a lot of pain and today and talked a lot. And there is a lot of healing that's gone on with you, still going on with all of us, right? Recovery is a process too.
Oh, definitely. And these are tears, but they're healing tears today. You know, they're healing.
Yeah.
And I love what I do. I get up in the morning, and, you know, some people say I'm going to work. I'm going to work.
Speaking of Daisy.
Speaking of Daisy, she's always calling, checking in.
It's awesome.
That's my
life.
Yeah, of course. She's been to our volunteer recognition dinners with
yeah. And taking pictures with you.
Yeah.
Oh, yes. Now I remember Daisy. Of course I do.
Yeah. And she's in front row always, cheering me on. She is definitely my rock, and I think everyone that comes into recovery, we should all have that someone or people in that can help us, that can believe in us, that can guide us until we can walk in our both 2 feet, you know? So recovery is beautiful because it allowed me to purchase my own home. So now I'm a homeowner. I have a nice condominium. I was able to move out of the area where I lived, but I had to live there for 4 years when I came into recovery. Some people say I have to change geographically. I have to go here. I can't live here anymore. You got to change the way you think and the way you see things. When I would go to CCAR and walk from home to CCAR, I wouldn't see the place the way I used to see it when I was running in the streets. I don't know if I'm making sense. It was a total different way. CCAR is an incredible part in my recovery, and I try to instill in my volunteers what was taught to me, and how, you know, we have to make changes in our lives in order to get a result. We cannot continue doing the same things over and over and expecting different results. The result is always going to be the same. So we're the ones that have to change. And I love my volunteers. I have so many right now. Center's getting back full. And there was just a graduation of 5 of my interns, and they sent me their pictures and how they see me, you know. Like you're a guidance. And I don't see myself like that.
They don't
I
see
just-
the disease. They see
Yeah,
you.
they see Liz.
They see Liz.
And I didn't do nothing special. I
That's
just
beautiful.
treat
did.
people with dignity and respect and meet them where they're at. And CCAR believes that transform people. So that's what I'm in the business of.
Thank you.
Thanks for
Liz.
having me, guys.
Thanks, Liz.